She was rejected for being Apache and fertile, until a cowboy fought for her. Maria was born in a small town surrounded by wide fields and dusty roads, where life moved slowly and everyone seemed to know each other's business. Her family was proud of their Apache heritage, and they made sure she understood her roots from a young age. Her grandmother often told stories of brave ancestors, warriors, and women who had survived through strength and courage. Maria listened with wide eyes, imagining herself walking beside these strong women, feeling the power of their history running through her. Yet, life in her town was not always kind. People could be cruel in small ways, often without realizing it. From the moment she started school, Maria noticed how other children would stare at her skin, her hair, and the way she spoke. Some would ask questions that made her feel awkward, and others would whisper behind her back. It wasn't just the children, even adults treated her differently. They made jokes about her heritage or assumed things about her life without ever asking her directly. These small acts of prejudice piled up, creating a wall between Maria and the world around her. Despite this, Maria was determined to live with her head held high. She worked hard in school, excelling in reading and history, subjects that connected her to her own story and the stories of the world. She loved learning, not just because it made her feel accomplished, but because it gave her a sense of control. In a town that often tried to define her by her skin or her background, knowledge became her armor. Her teachers noticed her intelligence and her curiosity, praising her when she answered questions and encouraged her to read more. But even as she shined in the classroom, whispers followed her outside. The rumors started when Maria was still very young. Some of the children and even adults began calling her too fertile, as a way to make fun of her and her family. Maria did not fully understand the meaning at first, but she could feel the weight of the words. They were not just teasing, they were meant to diminish her, to make her feel like she was somehow less than others. Every time she heard it, a small knot of hurt formed in her chest. She wondered why people felt the need to label her in such a way, as if who she was inside didn't matter at all. At home, her parents tried to comfort her. They reminded her of their family's strength, of the pride that came from being Apache, and of the importance of respecting herself even when others did not. Her mother often said, "Maria, people will try to define you by what they do not understand, but you define yourself. That is your power." Her father would sit beside her and tell her stories about resilience, about how their ancestors had faced challenges far greater than whispers and judgment. These words gave Maria hope, but they could not erase the sting of rejection she faced every day. As she grew older, the challenges increased. Friends she tried to make drifted away when gossip spread. Boys she liked avoided her, influenced by the rumors that painted her in ways she could not control. Each rejection hurt, leaving her feeling isolated, even when she was surrounded by people. School dances, parties, and casual conversations became sources of anxiety. She wanted to be accepted, to be seen as a person with dreams and feelings, not just as someone with a label attached to her name. Maria also struggled with her own self-image. Looking in the mirror, she often questioned herself. Was she really defined by these whispers? Did people truly see her, or just the stereotypes that had been passed down through generations? These questions kept her awake at night. She loved her heritage, but she wished she could live in a place where it was celebrated, not mocked. Despite the pain, she refused to hide who she was. She wore her traditional jewelry when she could, spoke proudly of her ancestors, and kept her head high even when others tried to knock it down. At 16, Maria experienced one of the harshest moments of rejection in her life. She had developed a quiet crush on a boy named Daniel, someone she thought could see past the rumors and the labels. She gathered courage and tried to get close to him, hoping to build a friendship that might lead to more. But when Daniel's friends whispered the same rumors about her, he stepped back. He avoided her for weeks, and the message was clear. Being Apache and fertile was too much for him to handle. Maria felt the world collapse around her. She sat alone under the big oak tree near her school, staring at the sky, trying to hold back tears. "Why can't they see me?" she whispered to herself. Her grandmother noticed the change in her and decided to intervene in her own gentle way. One evening, she took Maria to the edge of the small creek behind their house, where the water ran clear and the world felt calm. "Maria," she said, "the world will always have people who cannot see your worth, but you must never let them take it from you. Your strength, your heritage, your heart, they are yours alone. Protect them, and one day someone will see you for all of it." Maria listened, letting the words settle deep inside her. That night she made a promise to herself. She would not let gossip or prejudice define her. She would rise above it, no matter how long it took. School continued to be a battleground. Teachers sometimes unintentionally reinforced stereotypes, while classmates made assumptions about her family, her behavior, and her future. Maria learned to navigate these challenges carefully. She became observant, learning who she could trust and who would only bring hurt. She also found solace in books, music, and the stories of women who had fought against odds greater than hers. Each story she read gave her courage. She realized that though rejection could hurt, it could also teach her resilience, patience, and the value of self-respect. By the time Maria was 18, she had grown into a young woman who carried herself with quiet dignity. She still felt the sting of past rejections, but she had learned to armor her heart without closing it entirely. She worked part-time at a local cafe, saving money for college, and spent evenings studying her family history, writing notes about ancestors she had never met but admired deeply. Despite the town's prejudice, she refused to shrink. She was determined to live her life on her own terms, holding tightly to the pride of being Apache while refusing to let gossip define her character. Yet, even as she built her independence, Maria could not ignore the longing for connection. She wanted someone to see her, not the rumors, not the labels, but the real Maria, brave, kind, and full of life. She often wondered if such a person existed, someone willing to look past society's judgments and appreciate her for who she truly was. Her heart carried both hope and fear, knowing that the journey to acceptance, love, and understanding might be long and uncertain. One spring morning, as the wind carried the scent of blooming flowers and fresh grass, Maria walked through the town square, her head held high despite the familiar stares. She knew the world might never be perfect, but she also knew her spirit could not be broken. Every rejection, every whispered insult, every hurtful glance had shaped her into someone stronger. And though she had not yet found the person who could see her fully, she held onto a quiet belief that such a person might one day appear, someone willing to fight alongside her against prejudice, to recognize her worth, and to honor her heritage. Maria's story was only beginning, but even in the face of rejection, she carried herself with courage and hope. She was more than the labels others placed upon her. She was a young woman with dreams, resilience, and a heart ready to love and be loved in return. And somewhere in the not-too-distant future, life was about to introduce her to someone who would see all of that, and refuse to let the world dim her light. Life for Maria did not get easier as she stepped out of her teenage years into adulthood. The weight of society's judgments followed her everywhere, like a shadow she could not shake. Even in her small town, where she had grown up surrounded by familiar faces, the whispers and sideways glances never fully disappeared. People had a way of speaking without words, exchanging looks, making subtle gestures, hinting that she was different, as if being Apache and labeled fertile somehow made her less deserving of love, respect, or happiness. Each encounter reminded Maria that she was still battling against a world that misunderstood her. Her days were full of routines. Maria worked at the cafe her parents had helped her find, waking early to prepare pastries, serve coffee, and manage the register. She found satisfaction in her work because it allowed her to support herself, to feel independent, and to contribute to her family. Yet, the cafe was not free from judgment. Some customers would make offhand comments about her background or her family, questioning where she came from or making jokes that cut deeper than they seemed. Maria learned to smile politely, to nod and say nothing, even as the words stung. Over time, she realized that confrontation often only made matters worse, and she decided to protect herself by holding her dignity above all else. At home, Maria sought refuge. Her parents and grandmother remained her pillars of strength. They would sit with her at the kitchen table, helping her understand that while the world might judge unfairly, her worth was not tied to the opinions of others. Her grandmother often reminded her, "Maria, the world is slow to change, but your heart is quick to grow. Protect your spirit and the right people will see you." Maria clung to these words, repeating them quietly to herself when the town felt too heavy, when whispers and stares seemed unbearable, and when hope felt distant. Despite the challenges, Maria refused to isolate herself completely. She wanted friends, connections, and experiences that went beyond her family, but every attempt at friendship came with difficulty. People were hesitant, influenced by rumors and stereotypes, and often retreated when they realized that Maria was strong-willed and independent. Some pretended to befriend her but spread gossip behind her back. Each betrayal left a mark, making her wary but not broken. She learned to read people carefully, to understand intentions, and to choose her trust wisely. Romance, however, was a different kind of struggle. Maria longed to be loved, to find someone who would see her for who she truly was. She dreamed of someone who would respect her culture, admire her resilience, and cherish her heart without judgment. But in a town where prejudice ran deep, love seemed distant. Every hopeful glance was met with hesitation, every compliment shadowed by doubt. Young men would smile at her briefly, then retreat when gossip about her fertility or heritage spread. Each rejection was not just personal, it was a reflection of the town's inability to embrace diversity. Maria's heart carried both sadness and determination. She refused to allow the constant rejection to define her. Instead, she poured herself into passions that gave her joy and purpose. She spent her evenings reading books about history, culture, and strong women who had defied odds. She wrote in her journal, documenting her experiences, her thoughts, and her dreams for the future. These moments became her sanctuary, a place where she could process her feelings and reaffirm her strength. Writing, she realized, allowed her to make sense of the world, to understand that rejection was not a measure of her value, but a reflection of the limitations of others. Yet even with this inner strength, loneliness sometimes crept in like a cold wind. On weekends, Maria would watch other couples walking hand in hand, laughing freely, sharing stories without fear of judgment. She longed for that connection, the kind of intimacy and trust that seemed so ordinary for others but was elusive for her. It was not merely a desire for romance. It was a longing for recognition, for someone to see her fully and accept her without conditions. She often whispered to herself, "Is there someone out there who will truly see me?" Work offered some distraction from these thoughts. Maria found satisfaction in serving regular customers at the cafe, some of whom treated her with respect and kindness. They noticed her work ethic, her attention to detail, and the warmth she offered despite the difficulties she faced daily. For brief moments, she felt seen, not for her background or the rumors that surrounded her, but for the effort she put into her work and the care she showed to others. These small moments of acknowledgement became precious, reminders that not everyone judged by appearances or gossip. Her family continued to play a critical role in her life. Her parents encouraged her to pursue further education, reminding her that knowledge was a tool to build a life beyond the narrow perceptions of her town. Maria took this advice seriously. She enrolled in community college, focusing on history and social sciences, fascinated by the stories of people who had faced prejudice and injustice but persevered. Education became a source of empowerment, giving her the ability to understand the world, analyze its unfairness, and envision a future where she could rise above societal judgment. Even as Maria immersed herself in learning, the town's whispers persisted. She noticed subtle acts of exclusion, friends not inviting her to gatherings, neighbors making judgmental comments, and strangers staring with curiosity and suspicion. Each instance reminded her that life would never be completely free of prejudice. But rather than allowing these actions to defeat her, she used them as fuel to strengthen her resolve. She learned to smile when confronted with ignorance, to answer questions with patience, and to remain composed in the face of unfair treatment. Through all this, Maria discovered a quiet resilience she had not known before. She realized that life would never be easy, but she had the power to shape her reactions, to choose dignity over anger, and to focus on her growth rather than the limitations others placed on her. Her grandmother's stories and her parents' encouragement had given her a foundation, and she now began to build on it with her own experiences. Each day of endurance, each act of kindness despite hurt, and each moment of self-respect strengthened her spirit. Maria also began to dream more vividly about love, though cautiously. She imagined a partner who would respect her culture, honor her dreams, and support her in times of hardship. She imagined someone unafraid of societal judgment, someone willing to see her fully and stand beside her. These dreams were careful and quiet, nurtured in the corners of her heart where hope could grow without interference from the world's cruelty. She clung to these visions as motivation, a promise that life could offer something beautiful despite its hardships. At 21, Maria felt a mixture of pride and exhaustion. She had grown into a capable, intelligent, and resilient young woman, yet the loneliness remained. Society had taught her to be cautious, to navigate its judgments, and to protect herself. But she also recognized the value in waiting, in choosing carefully whom she allowed into her heart. She understood that real connection required patience, trust, and courage, qualities she had cultivated through years of adversity. One day, as she walked through the market, Maria noticed a stranger observing her, not in a judgmental way but with quiet curiosity. Something in his demeanor felt different from the others she had encountered in her life. He did not whisper or stare rudely. Instead, he seemed to notice her presence fully, as if he could see past the gossip and the labels. Maria felt a flicker of hope, a small but powerful reminder that life could bring unexpected opportunities. Though she had faced years of prejudice and rejection, she realized that resilience, patience, and self-respect had prepared her to recognize when someone worth her trust appeared. Even with that glimmer of possibility, Maria remained grounded. She continued her work, her studies, and her pursuit of self-growth. She knew that life would continue to challenge her, but she was determined to meet each obstacle with courage. She had learned that rejection was not the end, that societal judgment could be resisted, and that love and respect were worth waiting for. Every day, she reaffirmed her commitment to herself, to honor her heritage, protect her dignity, and remain true to the person she had fought so hard to become. As the sun set over the small town, casting golden light on the fields and streets she had known all her life, Maria walked home with a quiet confidence. She had survived rejection, faced prejudice, and endured loneliness, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more aware of her own worth. Though life had not yet brought her the love she longed for, she understood that the journey itself had shaped her into someone remarkable. And somewhere, she felt, the world held a promise that one day, someone would see her fully, honor her for who she was, and stand beside her through life's challenges. Maria's story in these years was one of quiet endurance, self-discovery, and inner growth. Every setback had taught her lessons about strength, patience, and resilience. Every whispered insult had sharpened her understanding of human behavior and society's flaws, and every small act of kindness or acknowledgement had reminded her that not all people judged unfairly. These experiences built the foundation for the next chapter of her life, a chapter that would test her courage, her heart, and her ability to trust someone fully. Though the world had not yet fully accepted Maria, she had accepted herself. She had embraced her heritage, learned from her struggles, and nurtured hope despite years of loneliness. And as she looked ahead, she understood that her journey was far from over. Life had challenges ahead, yes, but it also had the potential for joy, love, and acceptance, a promise she carried in her heart, ready to embrace when the time came. Spring had arrived in the small town, and with it came a sense of change. The air was warmer, the grass greener, and the scent of wildflowers drifting through the streets. Maria noticed these changes as she walked through town, carrying her books and thinking about the future she was slowly building for herself. Life had been full of challenges, but she felt stronger now. Years of rejection, loneliness, and prejudice had taught her to rely on her own strength and patience. She was ready for something new, though she did not yet know what form it would take. It was on one of these ordinary mornings that he arrived. Luke, a young cowboy, came into town with the steady confidence of someone who had faced life's hardships and learned to endure them. He had spent years traveling, working on ranches, helping cattlemen, and learning to live close to the land. There was a quiet strength about him, a calmness in the way he carried himself, and a kindness in his eyes that immediately caught Maria's attention. He did not look at her with curiosity or judgment, as so many others had. Instead, he seemed to notice her as a person, fully and genuinely. Maria first saw him at the local market. He was helping a shopkeeper load hay into a cart, moving with ease and purpose. When their eyes met briefly, Maria felt a strange sense of recognition, not of knowing him before, but of sensing that he could understand something about her that most people never did. She quickly looked away, embarrassed by the intensity of the feeling. But as she continued with her errands, she found herself glancing back, curious about the stranger who seemed unbothered by the town's judgments. Luke, for his part, noticed Maria too. There was something different about her. She carried herself with quiet dignity, even in the face of the subtle glances and whispers from townspeople. He had seen many people in his travels, but few had the grace to endure cruelty without losing their spirit. Her eyes held stories, and he wanted to know them all. Without being intrusive, he approached her politely, starting a simple conversation about the market and the weather. His calm voice, paired with a genuine smile, put Maria at ease. For the first time in a long while, she felt that someone might actually see her, not the gossip, not the labels, but her. Their conversations grew over the following days. Luke was patient, never rushing or prying, allowing Maria to open up at her own pace. They talked about their lives, their dreams, and the small joys they found in daily routines. Luke shared stories of his travels, of hard work on the ranches, and the lessons he had learned from nature and people alike. Maria, in turn, spoke of her family, her heritage, and the struggles she had endured in the town. Luke listened without judgment, and his attention made her feel valued in a way she had not experienced before. Despite the growing connection, Maria remained cautious. Her past experiences had taught her to protect her heart. She had been rejected too many times for her heritage and labeled unfairly by others, and she was wary of anyone new. Luke, however, did not push. He respected her boundaries, showing patience and understanding. Over time, Maria began to trust him, realizing that his respect for her was genuine. This trust became the foundation of a budding friendship, one built on mutual respect and shared understanding. Their friendship slowly transformed into something deeper. Luke admired Maria's resilience, intelligence, and strength. He saw the pride she held in her Apache heritage and the way she refused to let prejudice define her. He admired how she worked tirelessly to build her life despite the challenges, and he wanted to support her in every way he could. Maria, in turn, found herself drawn to Luke's sincerity, his courage, and his gentle nature. He did not try to change her or diminish her experiences. He simply stood beside her, acknowledging her worth and offering companionship without expectation. As the days turned into weeks, Luke began to notice the whispers and judgment Maria faced from the townspeople. He saw how some people would stare when she walked by, how others would make comments just loud enough for her to hear. It angered him, not because Maria was weak, but because he recognized the injustice of it. He quietly began to defend her in subtle ways, helping her with errands when others treated her unfairly, offering a supportive word, and making it clear through his actions that he valued her above the gossip and prejudice. Maria noticed this support and felt a warmth she had not known in years. It was not just the presence of another person. It was the knowledge that someone was willing to stand with her against the small cruelties of the world. She began to believe, slowly but surely, that she could be loved and respected without sacrificing who she was. Luke's presence offered her hope, a reminder that even in a town that had judged her so harshly, there were people who could see beyond labels and whispers. Together, they began to explore the town and its surroundings. Luke showed Maria the trails through the nearby hills, the hidden streams, and the open fields where the wind seemed to carry freedom itself. Walking beside him, Maria felt a sense of liberation. She could talk openly, laugh freely, and share her thoughts without fear. For the first time in a long time, she felt a connection that was not tainted by prejudice. Luke did not shy away from her heritage. Instead, he asked questions, listened to her stories, and celebrated her identity. This acceptance, simple yet profound, deepened Maria's trust and affection. The townspeople began to notice the change too. Some whispered about Luke's attentiveness, unsure of his intentions or confused by his respect for Maria. Others began to soften their attitudes, seeing that he treated her as an equal and a person of worth. While gossip still lingered in corners, the strength of their growing friendship made the judgment seem smaller, less significant. Maria realized that having someone by her side who refused to accept prejudice made the world feel less hostile, and for the first time, she allowed herself to hope for love. One afternoon, as they sat by the creek that had always been Maria's place of reflection, Luke spoke quietly. "Maria, I know you've faced a lot," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "And I can't change the past or what people have said, but I want you to know that I see you. I see all of you, your strength, your heart, your heritage, and I want to be here with you, not because of what others think, but because of who you are." Maria felt a tear slip down her cheek, not from sadness but from relief. For years she had waited for someone to see her truly, to value her not for labels or gossip but for her essence. And here he was, standing beside her, offering exactly that. She reached for his hand, feeling the warmth and steadiness that had become a source of comfort. In that moment, she understood that connection, trust, and love could exist, even in a world that had often tried to deny her worth. Their bond continued to grow, slowly but steadily. Luke remained patient and supportive, never rushing, never imposing, always allowing Maria to set the pace. He celebrated her victories, offered comfort during setbacks, and consistently showed that he valued her for who she was. Maria, in turn, opened her heart gradually, learning to trust and to share her deepest thoughts and dreams. The friendship blossomed into a quiet romance, one built on respect, understanding, and mutual admiration. As spring turned to summer, Maria began to see the possibility of a life where love and respect were not mutually exclusive. She realized that her past rejections had not defined her, that her heritage was a source of pride, and that the world could offer companionship to those who dared to wait and trust. Luke's presence reinforced these lessons daily, showing her that true connection was built on patience, sincerity, and courage. Together, they faced small challenges, from whispered gossip in town to the occasional disapproving glance. But Luke's unwavering support reminded Maria that prejudice could be confronted with dignity, kindness, and steadfastness. She began to understand that love was not just about romantic feelings. It was about standing together, defending each other, and celebrating each other's worth. By the end of the summer, Maria and Luke's relationship had become a quiet force in the town. People who had once whispered began to notice the respect and care in their interactions. While not everyone approved, the strength of their bond made the judgments seem insignificant. Maria felt a sense of empowerment she had never known before, knowing that someone could see her fully and value her entirely. In this chapter of her life, Maria learned an important lesson: that love could arrive unexpectedly, and when it did, it could heal the wounds inflicted by years of rejection. Luke's presence was not just companionship. It was validation, acceptance, and the promise of a future where she could be proud of who she was. Together, they began to navigate the world, side by side, showing that patience, respect, and courage could overcome prejudice. Maria's life had changed in ways she had never imagined. From a girl burdened by judgment and rejection, she had grown into a woman capable of trusting, loving, and embracing the future with hope. And with Luke by her side, she realized that the challenges she had endured had prepared her to recognize true companionship when it appeared, a bond built not on whispers or labels, but on mutual respect, understanding, and care. Life in the small town began to shift slowly for Maria after she grew closer to Luke. Their connection, built on trust, respect, and understanding, brought a light into her life that she had not known in years. For the first time, she felt a sense of safety, a quiet confidence that someone truly saw her for who she was. Yet the town's whispers and judgment did not disappear overnight. Some people still eyed her suspiciously, questioning why Luke, a young cowboy respected for his honesty and work ethic, would spend time with someone they had long labeled with prejudice. Maria had grown accustomed to these judgments over the years, but she could see the worry in Luke's eyes when he noticed them. At first, he tried to ignore it, believing that their bond was enough to overcome shallow opinions. But as time passed, he realized that ignoring the prejudice would not protect Maria or show the townspeople that their judgments were wrong. He began to take small steps, standing up for her in public in ways that were firm but respectful, challenging the assumptions people made, and showing that Maria's worth could not be diminished by gossip. It started at the cafe where Maria worked. One afternoon, a group of townspeople made comments about her heritage, laughing about the rumors that had followed her for years. Maria froze, unsure how to respond, feeling the familiar weight of embarrassment and hurt. Luke, who had been helping carry supplies, stepped forward calmly. "I don't think that's fair," he said quietly but firmly. "Maria has worked hard, is kind to everyone here, and deserves respect just like anyone else." His words were simple, yet they carried power. The group fell silent, not expecting someone to speak out, and Maria felt a surge of gratitude and relief. That moment marked the beginning of a new phase in their relationship. Luke's willingness to defend her, not with anger but with reason and respect, gave Maria courage she had not realized she still needed. She began to see that standing together made her stronger, that facing prejudice did not have to be a solitary struggle. Together, they navigated public spaces with a quiet confidence, showing through their actions that love and respect could overcome even the most persistent whispers. Luke's support extended beyond public moments. He helped Maria with practical challenges too, offering assistance when she faced obstacles in daily life. When a local teacher questioned her capabilities because of her heritage, Luke accompanied her to meetings, providing moral support and ensuring that her voice was heard. When a neighbor spread rumors about her family, he calmly confronted the misinformation, making it clear that such talk was harmful and unacceptable. Each act, small or large, reinforced Maria's sense of self-worth and reminded the town that prejudice could be challenged without aggression. The townspeople began to notice the difference in how Maria carried herself. She was no longer quiet and hesitant in the face of judgment. Instead, she walked with pride, her head held high, supported by someone who refused to let society diminish her. Some people began to change their attitudes, seeing that their gossip and assumptions had no power over her when she stood with courage. Others remained skeptical, but even their criticism lost some of its sting, unable to touch the strength of Maria and Luke's bond. One day, the challenge became personal. A group of townspeople openly criticized Maria in the town square, making comments about her heritage and the labels that had haunted her for years. Maria felt a familiar ache in her chest, a mix of anger and hurt. But this time she was not alone. Luke stepped beside her, his presence steady and unwavering. He spoke calmly but firmly, addressing the crowd with words that commanded attention without aggression. "Maria is a good person," he said. "She works hard, treats people with kindness, and has every right to live her life free from judgment. If you cannot respect her, that is your choice, but it will not define her, and it will not define her worth." The town square fell silent. For the first time, Maria felt a sense of empowerment in the face of direct prejudice. Luke's words were not just a defense. They were a statement of truth, a declaration that love, respect, and integrity could overcome long-standing stereotypes. Maria realized that she no longer needed to face these challenges alone, and that together, she and Luke could create a space where respect and dignity mattered more than gossip or rumors. Their journey was not without setbacks. Some townspeople resisted the change, continuing to spread rumors and make judgmental comments. But each time, Luke remained by Maria's side, offering quiet reassurance and consistent support. He did not allow anger or resentment to guide his actions. Instead, he relied on patience, reasoning, and the strength of their relationship to confront prejudice. Maria began to see that real courage was not just about enduring hardship alone. It was about standing together and showing through action that injustice could be met with dignity. As the weeks passed, Maria grew more confident in herself and her place in the town. She continued to work at the cafe and attend college, excelling in her studies while navigating the social challenges that had once overwhelmed her. With Luke's support, she found new strength to speak up when unfair treatment occurred, knowing that she was not only defending herself but also modeling courage and respect for others. She began to mentor younger students who faced prejudice, sharing her story and teaching them that resilience and self-worth could withstand gossip and judgment. Luke also encouraged Maria to embrace her heritage openly and proudly. He attended cultural events with her, learning about Apache traditions, history, and practices, and celebrating them alongside her. The act of honoring her identity publicly was both empowering and healing for Maria, showing that her heritage was something to be cherished, not hidden. Together, they began to create small but meaningful changes in the town's perception, demonstrating that respect and understanding could grow when nurtured with patience and integrity. Over time, the town began to shift in subtle ways. People who had once whispered and judged started to observe the strength of Maria and Luke's relationship. Some softened their attitudes, offering smiles or polite greetings instead of ridicule. Others remained skeptical, but their influence diminished as the couple's presence and integrity spoke louder than gossip. Maria realized that change was possible, even in a community that had seemed resistant, and that love, courage, and support could transform not just individual lives, but the broader environment around them. One afternoon, as they walked through the fields just outside the town, Maria reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the young girl who had endured whispers, judgment, and rejection, feeling small and unseen. Now, standing beside Luke, she felt empowered, respected, and valued. She understood that her journey had not been easy, but every challenge had prepared her for the life she was now building. Together, they had confronted prejudice, defended dignity, and created a space where love and respect mattered above all else. Luke squeezed her hand gently and smiled. "You've come so far, Maria," he said, "and I'm proud to stand with you through everything. You've taught me so much about strength and resilience, and I hope I've been able to show you that you're never alone in this world." Maria smiled back, tears of gratitude filling her eyes. She realized that true partnership was not just about love. It was about facing challenges together, supporting each other, and standing for what was right, even when it was difficult. By the end of the summer, Maria's life had transformed in meaningful ways. She was no longer the young woman who hid from prejudice or allowed gossip to shape her self-image. She was confident, proud of her heritage, and supported by someone who truly valued her. The town, though not perfect, had begun to recognize that she was a person of worth, capable of resilience, kindness, and courage. Luke's unwavering support had been instrumental in this transformation, showing that love could be a powerful force against injustice and prejudice. Through these experiences, Maria learned that life's challenges were not just obstacles. They were opportunities for growth, courage, and connection. She discovered that true strength came from standing firm in one's values, embracing identity, and trusting in those who truly cared. And perhaps most importantly, she realized that love was not just about feelings. It was about partnership, respect, and the willingness to fight for each other when the world seemed determined to bring them down. Maria's story in this chapter was one of empowerment and resilience. She faced prejudice head-on, supported by someone who refused to let society define her worth. Together, she and Luke navigated challenges with patience, integrity, and courage, transforming not only their own lives, but also influencing the community around them. And as they looked toward the future, Maria understood that love, respect, and determination could overcome even the deepest-rooted judgments, creating a life filled with hope, connection, and dignity. The seasons changed, and with the passing months, Maria's life had transformed in ways she could hardly have imagined. The harsh whispers and judgment that had once followed her everywhere no longer held the same power. With Luke by her side, she felt a new sense of confidence, pride, and hope. Life was not perfect, prejudice had not completely vanished, but the strength of their love and partnership made the world feel more welcoming, more manageable. She had grown into a young woman who could stand tall, unafraid of the opinions of others, and secure in the knowledge that she was valued for exactly who she was. Their love had matured steadily, not through grand declarations or dramatic gestures, but through countless small acts of support, understanding, and companionship. Luke continued to respect her boundaries and encourage her independence, while Maria had learned to trust him fully, opening her heart without fear. Together, they had navigated a town resistant to change, showing that patience, courage, and integrity could shift the hearts of even the most stubborn critics. Their bond had become a source of strength, not only for themselves but also for others who looked to them as an example of love that could overcome judgment. Maria's family, who had always been her foundation, watched the transformation with pride and relief. Her parents saw the confidence in her posture, the calm strength in her voice, and the joy in her eyes. Her grandmother smiled more often, knowing that Maria's life had taken a positive turn. Family gatherings were filled with laughter, stories, and a sense of belonging that Maria had once thought impossible in her small town. The presence of Luke had helped Maria not just to navigate prejudice, but to fully embrace her identity and her roots, celebrating them openly rather than hiding them away. The town itself had begun to shift in subtle but meaningful ways. People who had once whispered or turned away now approached Maria with a cautious respect. Some apologized for past behaviors, while others simply adjusted their own perceptions quietly. Maria noticed the change with both gratitude and humility. She knew that not all prejudice could disappear overnight, but seeing even a small shift in attitude reminded her that patience, courage, and dignity could make a difference. She realized that change often began with individual actions, with small choices to stand up for what was right, and she felt empowered knowing she had contributed to this transformation. Luke and Maria's relationship became a symbol of strength and partnership in the town. Their connection was built not on appearances or superficial attraction, but on deep mutual respect, shared values, and the courage to face societal judgment together. People began to see them not as a couple to gossip about, but as a couple to admire. They witnessed how Luke treated Maria with kindness and how she stood proudly by his side, and slowly, many began to understand that true love is measured by character, not by background or gossip. As their relationship deepened, Maria found new confidence in pursuing her dreams. She excelled in her studies, earning praise from teachers and peers alike. She started a small project to document the history and stories of Apache women, inspired by the tales her grandmother had once told her. Luke supported her every step of the way, helping her gather information, providing encouragement, and celebrating her successes. Together, they began to create a vision of a life filled with purpose, love, and pride. A life that honored Maria's heritage while embracing the opportunities of the present. One summer evening, as the sun dipped low over the fields and the sky turned golden, Luke and Maria walked hand in hand along a familiar trail. The air was warm, and the scent of wildflowers drifted around them. They stopped by the edge of a creek, the place that had always been Maria's refuge. Luke turned to her, his eyes full of sincerity and hope. "Maria," he said softly, "I know we've faced so much together. We've seen the worst of what people can say and do, but we've also seen the best in each other. I want you to know that I am with you, now and always. I want us to build a life together where we honor each other, support each other, and never let the world's judgment stand in our way." Maria felt tears prick her eyes, but they were tears of joy, gratitude, and relief. She had waited so long to find someone who truly saw her, respected her, and cherished her for who she was. Luke had been patient, kind, and steadfast, and in that moment she realized that love could heal old wounds, restore hope, and provide strength for the future. She nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. "I want that too," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion. "I want a life where we stand together, proud and strong, no matter what comes our way." From that moment on, Maria and Luke began planning their future. They talked about building a home where they could welcome family and friends, a place filled with warmth, laughter, and acceptance. They discussed their dreams for work, education, and community involvement, envisioning a life that honored Maria's heritage while creating opportunities for growth and connection. Each plan they made strengthened their bond, showing them both that a partnership built on respect, love, and shared values could overcome the challenges they had faced. The town, too, began to acknowledge their presence in more positive ways. Local events, once uncomfortable for Maria, became moments of celebration. People approached her with kindness, asked questions about her heritage, and showed interest in the projects she and Luke were pursuing together. While not everyone had changed, the support they received from those who had grown to respect them reinforced their belief that patience, courage, and consistent integrity could influence even a small, resistant community. Maria's family remained central to this new chapter of her life. Her grandmother continued to share stories of Apache strength and wisdom, while her parents encouraged her ambitions and offered guidance. Luke participated in these family gatherings with genuine interest and respect, learning about traditions, honoring cultural practices, and celebrating the history that had shaped Maria's life. Together, they created a space where love, respect, and heritage were celebrated equally, building a foundation for the life they would share. Through these experiences, Maria came to understand the true meaning of resilience. She realized that the challenges she had faced, rejection, prejudice, and loneliness, had not weakened her but had prepared her for a life filled with genuine connection, purpose, and love. Luke's unwavering support had shown her that she was deserving of care and respect, while her own perseverance had demonstrated that strength and patience could overcome obstacles. Together, they had created a partnership rooted in dignity, understanding, and shared values. One crisp autumn morning, Maria and Luke decided to host a small gathering at the edge of the fields where they had spent so many quiet hours together. Friends, family, and supportive townspeople attended, celebrating the bond they had built and the accomplishments they had achieved. Maria spoke briefly, sharing her gratitude for the love and respect she had received and the lessons learned from years of challenge. She highlighted the importance of standing up for oneself and for others, of valuing heritage, and of trusting in those who truly cared. Luke stood beside her, proud and supportive, reinforcing the message that love was a force that could overcome prejudice and bring people together. The celebration was not just about their relationship. It was a testament to perseverance, courage, and the transformative power of respect and integrity. Maria looked around at the faces of people who had once doubted her, at friends who had supported her, and at her family who had always been her strength. She realized that life had brought her to a place of acceptance and fulfillment, not through shortcuts or luck, but through hard work, patience, and unwavering belief in her own worth. As evening fell, Maria and Luke walked hand in hand through the fields, the sky painted with hues of orange and purple. They reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point, from years of whispered judgment, rejection, and loneliness, to a life filled with love, respect, and hope. Maria understood that the challenges they had faced were not obstacles to stop them, but stepping stones that had prepared them to appreciate the depth and beauty of their connection. Luke squeezed her hand gently, and she smiled, feeling a sense of peace and belonging she had never known before. Together, they began planning new dreams, from traveling to learning more about Apache history to contributing to the community in meaningful ways. Every goal they set was infused with love, partnership, and the lessons they had learned through hardship. Maria's past rejections no longer haunted her. They had shaped her into a woman capable of courage, compassion, and unwavering self-respect. Luke's presence had amplified her strength, showing her that love could be both gentle and powerful, protective and freeing. By the time winter arrived, Maria and Luke had solidified their bond, both in the eyes of the town and in their own hearts. Their relationship was a symbol of resilience, demonstrating that love, integrity, and respect could overcome even the deepest-seated prejudices. Maria felt proud not only of herself, but also of the life they were building together. A life where heritage, dignity, and mutual care were celebrated, and where the judgments of others no longer had the power to define them. In the quiet moments, Maria reflected on her journey. She remembered the young girl who had endured whispered insults, rumors, and rejection, unsure of her place in the world. She thought of the nights spent questioning her worth and the years of navigating a town that judged her unfairly. And yet here she was, standing strong, loved, and respected, with a partner who had fought alongside her, demonstrating the true meaning of commitment and integrity. She realized that life's hardships had prepared her to fully embrace the happiness and connection she now experienced. Maria's story concluded not with dramatic confrontation, but with steady, enduring triumph. She had faced the world's prejudice with patience and courage, built a life rooted in self-respect and love, and found a partner who celebrated her for exactly who she was. Together, she and Luke created a life of hope, pride, and fulfillment, proving that love and integrity could overcome adversity, heal old wounds, and inspire those around them.